Hey, you may never be able to retire. Now, I know that sounds very bad and daunting, but that can be a fact. And if you give me 3 minutes, I will explain you logically, technically, and financially how that can be a possibility and how to prepare yourself and to beat that prophecy if you want to. Hi. So, let me explain how I came up with this model and what are the assumptions that I took. Let's begin. So, assuming that a lot of people who are watching me are living in North America and European nations where inflation is basically at around 5 to 7%. The government figures will always show you, oh, it's under 2%, it's under 1%. Sometimes they'll show you, oh, it's negative inflation. It's like they show in Japan, but that's not the point. You always know what's happening. You always know that everything is getting expensive day by day. So let's assume that inflation is 7%, all right? And your wage growth or your salary growth is under 7%. I'm not going to give a number to that. At 7%, you may be surprised to know that in 10 years, everything that costs $1 now is going to cost $2, all right? And in 20 years, that same thing is going to cost $4. And in 40 years, that same thing is going to cost $8. Now, what is happening? It's really simple. When money compounds at compounding interest, there's something called a rule of 72. What do rule of 72 means? That means whatever rate of interest you're getting. So there's a number 72 divided by the rate of interest you're getting. For example, if you're getting 8% interest rate, it would take you 9 years to double your money, 8 9 to 72. If you're getting 16% interest rate for some reason, you're going to take 4 years and 6 or 7 months to double up your money, and so on and so forth. So for you guys, because the inflation is around 7% in European and most of North American nations, every 10 years, whatever things used to cost, whether it's oil, whether it's bread, whether it's gas, anything, is going to double up. No matter what, it's going to double up. And unfortunately, for some reason, some year the inflation is really bad, like 10%. So the doubling up is going to come up really quickly. Now, what do you mean by that? Well, really easy. Imagine you are like me in your early 20s. I'm 22, and imagining you're 22 as well. So if you're 22, so basically we have, and I'm assuming you're retiring at 65, you have 43 years of really good working age, right? 43 years, I'm going to take the 3 years off into vacations and leaves and childbirths and all of that. Let's take it to 40 years. So 40 years before you and I retire officially. Now, 40 years basically means 4 stages of 10 years. Now, this is where you got to understand in 40 years, everything that's going to cost $1 now is literally going to cost 8 or 10 times in 40 years. That is the rule of compounding. Now I'm explaining this scientifically. Ever since COVID, every nation on the planet has printed money like paper. Literally. If you are an American and you hold dollars in your pocket right now, I need you to take it out. And if you hold $5, like 5 bills of $1 note, 4 of them literally were made in the past 3 years after COVID. That was the condition. And it's not for America, it's for every nation. They printed money like crazy. They printed money because they were scared they're going to lose their economies. But the problem is when you print more cash, there's more inflation because there's more money supply, people have more money, people buy things, demand remains more or less the same, demand remains more or less increases, supply remains the same, and you get more inflation. But the problem is inflation never comes down. It is coming down a little bit when you raise interest rates like the Fed did, but it never comes down. So what basically happens is inflation goes up, but your wages remain the same. Now, I'm assuming something. If your wages is going up by 3 or 4% every single year, which is not happening in Europe specifically, as per I know from my friends and close colleagues, inflation is going up 6 to 7% every year, no matter what. So if your wages are going up by 3%, I'm assuming every single year, let's assume and be a little polite, every single year you're losing 4%, no matter what. In 10 years, you're actually going to lose 60% to 65%. But you'll be saying, but I'm not losing. No, you are losing because your money is losing its value. Let me give you a really simple example. The value of $100 in 2015, 10 years ago, from this recording, was something, I don't know, $100. Now, same $100 right now, what do you think its value is? Well, basically, it's going to be, I don't know, 65 or $70. Now, If you hold it in bank, you're going to feel, well, but the 100 remained 100. Yeah, it did remain 100, but the problem is the purchasing power went down. It's not the amount of money you have, it's the purchasing power you have. I'll give you a really simple example and you're going to laugh yourself off at that, but it's funny. There's no point in having $1 million salary a month if a loaf of bread is going to cost you $250,000. Now, the third and the most important part is the financial one. And guys, this one's serious because a lot of nations like South Korea and Japan, and a lot of European nations, specifically Nordic nations, Germany as well, are losing its people. The problem is there are more number of mouths to feed than the hands to bring that food to the table. You get my point? The number of earners are going down and the number of retirees are going up. And because the European nation specifically has been built on this idea of welfare state and socialism, and the society and the government is going to take after and it's going to look after you from your birth till the day you die, there will be more people who will be dependent on the government. That means there will be more people who will be dependent on the people working in the nation than the people who are actually working. Now, get my point really clearly. 30% of most of these European nations are getting closer towards this retiring age. There are some stats, according to some finance analyst and big statistics collecting corporation, that 50% or maybe 40% of all the workforce that is right now employed is going to retire in the next 25 to 30 years, because most of these people have reached their late 40s, early 40s, late 50s, 60s. So when they retire, there's going to be this big hole which will not be filled. Why? Because the population of most of these nations, including countries like India and China, which are so heavily populated, is going down. Because the fertility in most of these European nations is under 2. Sometimes it's as low as 0.8, for example, in terms of some Nordic nations, or in terms of Japan and Korea, which is terrible there. So what happens is that there are less number of babies being born, there are more number of people who are retiring, there are less number of people who are dying, so more number of people are retiring or dependent on the government, and there are less number of people who are getting in the workforce because less number of babies are born. So when you look at all this is a perfect storm, because you have high inflation, you have high real estate prices, which is real estate in most of these European nations is appreciating at around 10% year on year, where wages are just appreciating at 2 or 3%. So you can do the math there. So in 7 years, most of these real estate or prices are going to double up and then double up again. And there's going to be a point when everyone's going to be priced out. Specifically, if you're under 25, like me, you're going to be priced out, and you are going to live your entire life as a renter, and you will have no option. And guess what? Because the rules of rents change, it's 1% of whatever the value of asset is for a year, depending on the country you are in. At least that is what here we follow. You will not be able to afford that unless you're working as a hedge fund manager, unless you're working as a CDO of some tech company, which I don't think 98% of the people who watch me are working at right now. So these things will look funny from the outside, but when you look at the inside, this is a really bad future. And on top of that, we have AI, which is disrupting workforce left and right. The problem is not with AI. The problem is AI has made this unpredictability thing, is pushed it up 100 times. And when you push it up, that's some big issue. So we have less hands to create, more mouths to feed, less money in the pocket, more money going out. This is why I think you and I will never be able to retire. Thank you so much.